When I was young, I thought that with age comes wisdom, but then I saw how some people at 70 have minds as sharp as blades while others get lost in their own rooms. And I realized wisdom doesn't come with age, it comes with disciplined thinking. You can have gray hair, but lose clarity. You can look experienced, but live in a fog. If you want to stay razor sharp, even at 60, 70, and beyond, let me tell you about 3 things I've done myself to keep my mind in shape. But first, let me show you why this is more important than any retirement plan. Imagine this. One man at 80 speaks like he's young, clearly, vividly, with a sparkle in his eyes. And another at 45 can't remember where he left his keys and hasn't asked himself a new question in years. A paradox? No, that's just life. We all age, but not all of us fade. I always thought this was unfair. Why do some people keep their minds razor sharp until their last breath, while others fade long before they die? It seems like we all have the same brain, the same number of years, the same calendars. But the results differ. It's both terrifying and inspiring. I remember one evening sitting with an elderly gentleman in Florida. He was nearly 80, but when he started talking about economics, business, and philosophy, I caught myself thinking, I want to be like that when I'm old. He quoted Seneca and recalled his youthful mistakes with humor and clarity. And I thought, I don't just want to grow old, I want to stay sharp in mind, in words, in influence. And then I remembered another scene, a middle-aged man full of life but lost for words. He kept repeating the same stories, not because he loved them, but because he had nothing new to say. His mind wasn't old, it was abandoned, unpracticed, unchallenged, unattended. And that's when I told myself, Jim, cognitive health isn't a medical issue. It's discipline, it's a lifestyle, it's a choice. Today, I want to talk to you about 3 practices that have helped me stay mentally sharp over the decades. They're not vitamins, not pills, not breakthroughs from a lab. They're simple things. But how often is the simple ignored because it seems too obvious? One of the greatest deceptions I've seen in life is the belief that a clear mind will always be with you, that memory, focus, and ideas are things that require no upkeep. No! Your mind is a garden, and if you're not the gardener, weeds will grow. I've met many people on stages, in business, in life, who lost themselves not because of tragedy, not because of misfortune, but because they didn't take conscious care of the one thing that matters most, how they think. The mind isn't a gift, it's a muscle. And if you don't train it, it will atrophy like everything else. But here's the good news. Regaining clarity is possible. Boosting mental energy is possible. Even if you're 70, even if you're 80, I know what I'm talking about. I didn't start changing my life in my youth. It was after I turned 25. I was broke, depressed, hopeless. I couldn't even focus on paying bills. My mind wasn't working because I wasn't working on it. But then one man came into my life, Earl Schoaf. He didn't give me a pill. He didn't tell me I was special. He just said, Jim, if you want to change your life, start with your thoughts, because life is a reflection of thoughts. That was a mental slap. That was the beginning. And today, decades later, I can confidently say, clarity is a habit, memory is a skill, creativity is a discipline. Everything we call cognitive health is a daily choice. Do you know what betrays a person most as they age? Not the body. Indifference. Indifference to what you feed your mind. Indifference to whether you ask yourself new questions. Indifference to whether you're still curious about anything. One of my favorite sayings is, life doesn't stop when the heart stops. It stops when curiosity stops. And that's when cognitive decline begins. We talk about the cardiovascular system, about blood pressure, about sugar, but almost no one talks about the mind. And the mind is the driver of everything. You can have a healthy body, but if your thoughts are dull, you're not living, you're just functioning. Cognitive health isn't a scientific issue, it's a lifestyle issue. And in this lifestyle, there are 3 habits I'll nurture until my last day. And if you stick with me until the end, I won't just share them with you. I'll show you how you can start practicing them today, even if you've never taken this seriously before, because, friends, the most important investment isn't in a retirement fund. It's in the clarity of your thinking. So, get comfortable. Mentally switch on the light in your inner study, because what's coming next is what I wish I had heard back at 25 when my mind was in the dark. Practice 1. Become the guardian of your mind. One day my mentor, Mr. Schaff, asked me, "Jim, how much do you pay a guard to stand at the door of your mind?" I didn't understand what he meant. I thought maybe I'd missed a new word, but he repeated, "A guard. You wouldn't let just anyone into your home, right? So why is your mind like a train station? Anyone walks in, says anything, and you accept it. No filter, no doubt, no permission." That image stuck with me for life because my mind back then was exactly that, an open space for everything. Negativity from the TV, complaints from work, gossip from acquaintances, doubts from the news, anxieties from the world. I would wake up in the morning and immediately dive into the noise, and that noise kept me from thinking. It dulled my ability to see opportunities, and most importantly, it changed my internal language. I started repeating what I heard without thinking, and that's the most dangerous thing. You know what I've noticed after years of working with people? Most aren't physically tired. They're mentally exhausted because their brains are overloaded daily with information that has zero value. They wake up and check the news. They commute and listen to complaints. They come home and turn on the TV again, which tells them the world is bad, everything's expensive, the future is bleak. And then they ask, why can't I come up with anything? Why don't I have new ideas? Why is my brain foggy? My friend, it's not foggy, it's cluttered. And here comes the first big practice. Become the guardian of your mind. Not a victim, not a passenger, a guardian. People train their bodies in the gym, but who trains the mind? A mind that consumes only randomness deteriorates. A mind that feeds on fear weakens. A mind that accepts doubt every day fades away. So the question is, who did you let into your mind today, and what did they bring? My mentor once told me, your life doesn't improve by chance. It improves when your choices improve, and the most important choice is the choice of thought. Everything begins with a thought. Before an action, a thought. Before an emotion, a thought. Even before doubt, there's first a thought, which means by managing thoughts, you manage life. I adopted one simple but radical habit in my life. I stopped letting in things that have no value. I quit the toxic content information diet. If the TV leaves me angry after watching, it's no longer my TV. If a friend leaves me in doubt after a conversation, I don't have deep talks with them. If a piece of news doesn't lead to action, it has no right to my attention. That's not selfishness. That's mental hygiene. Your mind is not a trash bin, it's a temple. But how often do we let just anyone into that temple? People say, oh, it's just TV, just the news, just a podcast. But they don't just influence, they shape your inner voice. And your inner voice decides how you see the world and yourself. I learned to ask one simple question for every thought. Will this help me become better? If yes, it's an ally. If not, it's an enemy. Maybe it's clever, maybe it sounds smart. But if it destroys my clarity, I don't need it. Because clarity is my advantage. Have you ever felt like your thoughts weren't your own? Like you were repeating someone else's fears, someone else's anger, someone else's pessimism? That's a sign you need a guard, and not just any guard, one with standards, one who has a principle. Everything that enters either nourishes or it doesn't enter at all. That's the level of mental discipline that preserves not just your mind but your destiny. Now be honest. How many times in the past few days have you let in thoughts that had no value? How many times did you absorb someone else's panic? How many times did your ideas die because you listened to someone's anxiety? It's not that danger doesn't exist in the world. It's that constant worry prevents your brain from working at its best. It drains instead of drives. A fearful mind doesn't create. And if you're not creating, you're not growing. Do you know why this becomes even more important with age? Because the older we get, the more experience we have. And experience is great. But experience without fresh thinking is just an archive. You can have 1,000 stories but not a single idea. You can know everything and see nothing. And here's what I'll tell you. Cognitive health is not about the number of years. It's about the number of fresh perspectives. Inside us every day, two forces fight. The mind that seeks clarity and the noise that seeks control. And until you place a guard, the noise will win. So ask yourself, am I standing at the door of my mind? Or am I letting just anything walk in? And this is only the beginning. Because next I'll show you how to take the next step. Not just protect the mind, but build it every day. How to turn daily writing into a source of clarity, power, and memory. So stay with me, it only gets stronger from here. Practice 2. Your journal is your mental gym. Let me ask you a simple question, and please give an honest answer. How many ideas have you forgotten? How many life lessons have dissolved into memory without a trace? How much inspiration disappeared by the next morning because you didn't write it down when it came. I used to think I'd remember everything too, that my mind would hold on to the important stuff. But that's a big illusion. Memory isn't a vault. Memory is a sieve. And if you don't catch ideas right away, they pass you by like the wind, sometimes forever. Everything changed when my mentor said a phrase that I now share at every seminar, every meeting, every talk. Don't trust your memory, write. It was simple advice, but it created a new mindset. Since then, my journal has become my intellectual gym. I began training my clarity through paper. And you know what happened? I started thinking better, speaking better, remembering more deeply, understanding more clearly. All thanks to a pen and a plain notebook. And that's why I tell you today, it doesn't matter what you know if you haven't written it down. A journal isn't just words. A journal is you. Your process, your insights, your breakthroughs, your mistakes, your transformation. A person without a journal is a person without a mirror. They go through things but never see how those things change them. But a journal shows you who you were, who you've become, and who you can be. This, my friends, isn't a diary. It's a thinking tracker, a focus tool for the brain, a mirror for the mind. I still remember my first page, nothing special, just a date and one question. What did I learn about myself today? But that page became the beginning of an internal catalog of my discoveries. And over time I noticed, the more I write, the faster I think. The more often I capture my thoughts, the clearer I see them. It's like deep cleaning. Your thoughts become organized instead of piled up. You know, another reason journaling is important? It helps you think independently. In a world where everyone wants to implant their thoughts into your head, your journal becomes the space where yours reign. It's your quiet room, your thinking chamber, a place with no noise, just you, your reflections, your experiences, your foundation for decision making. People often tell me, Jim, I don't have time to write. And I respond, how much time do you spend repeating the same mistakes? Because friends, what isn't written isn't learned. If you haven't reflected on the experience, you've lost it. And when experience is lost, you go back into the same loop. But this time with no roadmap. When you journal, you build a navigator. You create a map. You see, this is where I failed and why. This is where I had a breakthrough and how it happened. And most valuable of all, you begin to see your patterns. You start noticing what triggers your fatigue, what sparks your doubt, what truly inspires you. And once you see that you gain power over yourself, I implemented a simple practice. At the end of each day, I wrote down 3 things. First, what I learned. Second, what I could have done better. Third, what I was grateful for. Sometimes it took 2 minutes. But those 2 minutes a day shaped my mind more than hours of news, advice, or books. Because this was my work on myself, my training, my growth. Now let me tell you another paradox. The older we get, the more important a journal becomes. Not just for memory, but for identity. People lose themselves over the years, not because they age, but because they stop capturing who they are. They stop asking questions. They stop noticing how they're changing. But if you write, you don't lose yourself. You create yourself every day. And maybe someone will say, that's not for me. I'm not a writer. Listen, I wasn't either. I just started with one thought. I don't want to lose myself. And that thought led me to a habit that saved my mind. So don't wait. Don't wait for the perfect notebook or inspiration or the right moment. Start with what you have. Even if it's the back of an old notebook, the key is just start. Because clarity doesn't come to those who wait. It comes to those who write. So if you want sharp thinking, deep memory, the ability to create your journal, not for social media, not for show, but for you. Because in that space, your strength begins. And that's not all. In part 3, we'll talk about the core principle, how to work on yourself in a way that success comes naturally, not as a result of chasing, but as a reflection of who you've become. And there, the greatest secret of a clear mind will be revealed. Don't miss it. Practice 3. Become someone who attracts clarity. One of the most dangerous illusions in life is the belief that success and clarity must be chased, hunted, and caught like a wild horse running free. But I want to share with you one of the most powerful phrases I've ever heard. It came from my mentor, and it turned my whole idea of growth upside down. You don't achieve success. You attract it by who you become. And I'll tell you something more, it's the same with mental clarity. You don't fight for it. You don't force it to arrive. You become the kind of person in whose presence clarity naturally appears. It responds to your internal structure, to your habits, to your resilience, to your depth. It visits where it's welcomed by open thoughts, not a cluttered mind. I know this might sound abstract, so let me make it real. I remember when I was 25, I was bankrupt not just financially, but mentally. My wallet was empty, my mind was chaotic, my heart was exhausted. I was trying to figure out how to earn, how to survive, how to pull out of that nosedive. But the more I thought, the foggier my mind became, because I was trying to solve the problem with the same thinking that created it. And that's when I came across my mentor, Mr. Schaff, again. He looked at me long and silently, then said, "Jim, if you want something to change, you have to change. You won't get better things until you become better. Success isn't something you chase, it's something you attract." I didn't fully understand it then, but I felt it was a key, because I was trying to get big results while staying the same person. And that's impossible. Results are reflections. They don't come to dreams, they come to the level of the person. And this brings us to the highest level of cognitive health. Yes, it's important to guard your mind. Yes, it's important to write your thoughts. But if you're not changing yourself, your mind doesn't expand. And clarity is a result of growth. Not calm, not comfort, but growth. The more I changed, the clearer I thought. Solutions came easier. Doubts faded. It wasn't magic, it was a natural law. Clarity comes to those who are clear on the inside, those who aren't stuck in habits, who aren't enslaved by old fears, who don't cling to resentments that cloud the mind like dust on glass. Do you know what breaks adult thinking the most? Unprocessed pain, doubts that become a home, habits that are convenient but toxic. And to break through that mental dust layer, you have to become new. You have to refresh yourself. And then not immediately, but inevitably, a new kind of thinking shows up. One morning you'll wake up and notice your thoughts are lighter, decisions simpler, memory sharper, ideas bolder. But that's not magic, that's self-work. I've always said, work on yourself more than on your job, because if you work on your job, you make a living. But if you work on yourself, you can create a destiny. And this applies to mental health too. A mind without growth is just a tool. A mind that grows with you, that's a leader, an architect, a generator, and that's the kind of mind you need at 40, 50, 60, 70, and beyond. You see, as we age, the world changes, but the most important thing is don't lose yourself, don't lose your interest, don't lose your questions, because as long as you ask, you're alive. As long as you change, you think. As long as you grow, your brain stays toned. And here's where it's crucial not to fool yourself, not to think, I'm older now, it's too late for me. Friends, clarity is not in your passport, it's in your principles. If you start living today as someone who attracts clarity, then clarity will come. If you speak less, think deeper, listen more attentively, your brain will thank you. If you step even a little outside your comfort zone daily, your neurons will say, oh, he's still with us, let's activate. Clarity is always a response to a request. And you are the one who makes that request. You are the one who creates the conditions. You are not a victim of age or circumstance or genetics. You are the author, and you either create a space for purity or leave the door open for noise. So now I want you to honestly ask yourself, who am I becoming? What is the state of my mental energy? Am I attracting clarity or running from it? Because that's the essence of this third practice. Become the person who attracts, not begs for, not fabricates, not steals, but attracts clarity. Because the mind isn't a gift, it's a response to your lifestyle, your habits, your goals, and your courage. And now we pause, but only for a moment, because up next is the practical part. We'll check what truly works for you. We'll do a small but deep mental workout, and I'll show you 5 questions I regularly ask myself to stay sharp. It'll be quick, it'll be simple, but it might become the most transformational minute of your week. Ready? Then let's move forward. Now a short training, simple but deep. 5 questions, 5 small mirrors. I want you to answer quickly, honestly, intuitively. Don't overthink. Feel your answer, because it's your internal thermometer for your cognitive state. And before we start, if you're not subscribed yet, do it right now. Moments like this don't come often. And I want you to be part of a community where it's not just motivation that grows, but thinking. Click subscribe and let's go. Question 1. On a scale from 1 to 10, how consciously do I choose what to feed my mind? Imagine your mind is a body. Every morning you consume information. The question is, was that a nourishing meal or brain-fast food? Your score shows whether you control the input or the world does it for you. Question 2. On a scale from 1 to 10, how regularly do I write down my thoughts, ideas, and insights? It's like having a vault for your discoveries. If you don't journal how much wisdom has already been lost forever, your score is the alarm. Are you the captain of your ship or just a passenger with no map? Question 3. On a scale from 1 to 10, how much do I grow for the sake of growth, not just results? This isn't about achievements. It's about internal expansion. Are you changing yourself each day or just getting through the day? Your answer reveals the truth. Remember, clarity doesn't live in stagnation. Question 4. On a scale from 1 to 10, how flexible is my mind? Do I seek the new or cling to the familiar? Thinking isn't concrete, it's clay. The more you shape it, the more forms appear. If you haven't changed your perspectives in years, your mind might be asleep. Wake it up. Question 5. On a scale from 1 to 10, how genuinely curious am I about life? This is the core, the source of all previous answers. Because curiosity is the fire that keeps the mind from fading. If you're indifferent, no technique will help. But if there's a spark, it can be fanned into a flame. Did you do it? Great. Now one request. Drop a comment and share which of these questions surprised you most. The one that made you stop, feel, wake up. Because sometimes that one is the door to new thinking. And one more thing, if this video gave you something meaningful, click like. Not for the algorithm, but to remember, you were here, you heard, you took the first step. And now, let me say something important. You don't have to answer these questions perfectly. You don't need 10s across the board. This isn't a competition, it's a compass. And I recommend after watching, go back to these questions again, but not in your head with a pen. Pause, write your answers, and start seeing your mind from the inside. Because, my friends, real breakthrough begins with honesty with yourself. Now it's all up to you. You've heard it, you've felt it, and now you'll either leave that inspiration for later or you'll turn it into a habit. Because the mind is a gift, one you either develop or lose. And the question isn't how old you are, the question is how much clarity, strength, and curiosity do you have? Do you wake up with a fire in your thoughts, or are you slowly fading? So here's my challenge to you. Become the person your mind is looking for. Become the one who guards their thoughts, who captures their truths, who grows every day, not because they have to, but because they can. Your clarity isn't a dream, it's a result. And a result comes from a lifestyle. And if even one moment in this video made you pause, don't let it fade. Because that moment is a sign that you're still living deeply. And that means the best is still ahead.